Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome out to another wonderful episode of Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions for Saturday night, May 28th, 2016. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, even though you can't read it in my lower third. Sorry, guys, it's a bug. I hope everybody has had a wonderful weekend so far, because obviously this is Memorial Day weekend. We had a big movie coming out, and I've seen kind of 50-50 kind of reception to it. I think, for the most part, we will all like those releases, because it was X-Men and it was Alice? Or no, it was X-Men and something else. But
I know X-Men at least. I'm not sure about Alice, but I could be wrong.
Yep.
Yeah,
so Alice? Okay.
Alice is
Uh-oh.
down.
I think we just lagged out Alex. So, once again, I hope everybody's having a good week. It's just been busy as all crap, obviously. We're trying to get tons of recording done for the summer for all of the major events that we have. But obviously, I'm living through it. I was able to get a review out. I was able to start up the Summer of WoW and all of that fun stuff on my channel. But I, of course, am not alone. I am being joined by my panel of usual fellow YouTubers, fellow critics, fellow all-around nice guys, fellow all-around weird guys at times.
Mm.
And so let's go ahead and start with Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, of Romney's Reviews from the Shelf, Romney's Reading Club, Romney's Viewing Club, Romney's whatever club he decides to bring to the channel tonight. How are you doing tonight, Romney?
I'm doing pretty good. The week has been all right. Been finally starting to get into the groove of things with my new job. And so far, so good. And I've also been enjoying some of the games on my Vita. I've started on The Wolf Among Us, so that's how I found out that Telltale doesn't optimize their games properly.
By the way, people, he has a Vita.
Yeah, I bought a Vita, used, and it came with this thing, thanks to the guy at Game Peddler. And so the one game I've been enjoying the most on Vita is not even a Vita title, it's a PSP title that's digital only, and that's, well, not digital only, that's a digital release, and that's Castlevania Dracula X Chronicles.
Ooh, but that's a good game. So
it's a really good game, and it reminds me of how good Castlevania used to be.
Oh, yes, indeed. And then also we are being joined by the Shadow Blazer himself, Alex Short. How are you doing this fine night, Alex?
Well, I'm doing pretty well. Just a nice, enjoyable, lazy weekend for me, at least for Saturday, and for tomorrow, because I don't work till Monday. So, yay!
Yay! You get the weekend off. You get the weekend off. That's all I got from that, is that you got the weekend off. And that doesn't happen that often for Alex. But obviously, we are here to talk about some geeky news and reviews and opinions. Now, unfortunately, Aldo is not going to be able to join us tonight. He is actually off at an event in Idaho. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's off at an event in Idaho. And then also, unfortunately, Brinton will not be able to join us tonight because he's out in California. So apparently everybody spent their vacation budgets but us.
Yep.
To which I'd respond, what vacation budget?
This is indeed true. You know what? At some point, Romney, we may just have to incorporate you into our vacation budget just so that you can have a vacation.
Yeah, just so that I'd be fine just seeing the ocean in person. That'd be enough.
And by ocean, not Great Salt Lake.
Yeah, Great Salt Lake does not count. Despite what the pioneers thought, it is not an ocean.
No.
It's just a lake filled with dead things.
So let's go ahead and get things started. Now, we actually are going to start things off with a bit of a left hook. And the reason we are is because a listener just so happened to bring this to my attention kind of last minute. But when I saw the story, I'm like, this is the length of levity that we need for this podcast tonight. And so we're going to go ahead and start things off. This is a tech-related story, but it happened, I think, a couple of days ago. And so I'm just sending the link out to my panelists right now, which means they can already read it and they're already maybe worried. So I have a feeling a good lesson will be taught tonight. A good lesson to my fellow gamers and fellow geeks, and that is proper console maintenance. And the reason I think it's going to be a lesson in proper console maintenance is that at least one thing you shouldn't do with your PS4 will be outlined tonight, and that is don't let a snake into your PS4. So this happened in Brazil, so that might be why. Because I mean, in jungle areas, and frankly, I mean, I live right outside where garden snakes can probably get into the house if I didn't, take all of that very serious. But apparently, in December last year, an electrician was given the task of fixing a broken PS4, which apparently was, and I quote, giving off a strong smell after it turned off. And so, instead of it being a normal electrical problem, this guy opened it up, and he basically found, it looks like 2 dead snakes in the PS4's hardware.
No, actually, it's only one. It's just burned in two places.
It was burned in 2 different places. So, there was just one dead snake. One is on the board itself, so obviously that's a damage issue. And then one, I think it looks like got caught in the middle of the exhaust port for the fan, maybe, or no, not. Sorry, one half of it got caught there for some weird reason. Then the other one got caught on the motherboard. So, wow, that's not pretty.
Nope.
That is not, but that might be a regular occurrence out in Brazil. I don't know. So yeah, they had that problem. I don't know. I don't know if this guy got like any kind of special treatment on the matter. Like they were able to repair the PS4 and hand it back to him. I don't think they did, because if it was giving off a smell, that means that snake was there for quite a while.
Well, and keep in mind, when they turn on the console, that means that it's being burned through, and so it's not even just, it was rotting and that's giving off smell. It was basically being cooked.
Yes. So, and I love the fact that this story literally ends as, this is why you should always leave repairs to the professionals. Yeah, so they can find your dead snake in your console.
Yeah, and the comments are already filled with either Indiana Jones jokes or Metal Gear jokes.
Yeah, although in the meantime, yeah, we had the Indiana Jones jokes, and what was the other one you were mentioning?
Metal Gear.
Okay, because in the middle of that, I also saw, well, now there's a dozen penis jokes, too. So let's just go ahead and open up to the panel. Alex, your thoughts on this wonderful tidbit of information to get you through your console maintenance needs.
Yeah, this just reminds me of a story from a few months ago where somebody traded in a Sega Genesis and it was filled with crack or something.
Like crack cocaine?
Yeah, drugs. Somebody had drugs in their Sega Genesis.
That's an inventive way to hide them.
Yeah, in the past it used to be dinosaurs. Now, outdated game consoles.
Wow, in some cases, Romney, you could actually make a reference for those being the same thing.
I mean, I guess my only guess is how the snake got into the console was, maybe when it was being manufactured out in Taiwan or China or wherever, that the snake crawled in the process and it was just shipped that way. I don't know how else the snake's going to get in.
This is in Brazil, and Brazil is kind of a jungle area. So I'm guessing that maybe that might also be, because the snake is small enough that I don't think it was anything bigger than like a garden snake.
Yeah, but at the same time, it would still need a pretty sizable hole to actually get onto the circuit board of a PS4.
This is true, and that does make me wonder how they got in there. But
unless it was a bootleg, like maybe if it was a bootleg console that was assembled using recycled hardware. Only
that would kind of make sense, because I mean, so there's a YouTube video attached to this of the console in question, and it doesn't fit the design that at least I'm used to.
Yeah, especially when you consider Brazil's video game market is mostly consisting of bootleg and pirated copies, because, well, to give people an idea, Brazil is kind of like Australia, where they have only one government body that has to look at every single game that is being released in the country to get a rating, and it's a process, and it's like the equivalent of having only one guy to do the job, and it takes years and years, and so it's just quicker and cheaper to just get the pirated versions because of the lengthy process. It also causes such things as, well, intense markups, meaning that here in the US, a PS4 may cost around €500.
500, and then at that point go straight into the 900, 1,000 kind of territory in Brazilian currency. Sorry, I think Romney's having some internet issues. Do you want to know what this actually Because, yeah, that happens in Brazil. That happens in a lot of South American countries. And it sucks. I still remember like listening to one of my favorite podcasts where one of the panelists was from Colombia. And so at that point, buying a console legit was hella hard. And you'd have to pump out tons of money to be able to do it. In fact, one of the things that was cool about that podcast was the fans of the podcast pooled together money to have a Wii bot for him. Remember, guys, back in the day when the Wii was hard to find. Like, you were lucky if it was in your store that given month. They bought a Wii for him and then got it through customs and shipped it to him.
Very nice.
And then they not only did that for the Wii, he got a PS3 the exact same way. And this is one of those guys that had to admit openly, like if he wanted a brand spanking new game, he had to go to the black market to get it at a decent price. And there is a black market for games in those areas.
Oh, I can imagine. Just either intense censorship or just the lack of the market expanding down there. So,
well, in some cases, those games will just be outright banned. Like their governments won't even they won't even give them a second thought on the matter, and they'll just outright ban them. So at that point, you have to black market those things in. I've actually heard Australia doesn't have this issue to that huge of an extent, but they're starting to have it because people are sick and tired of. Because I think and if we have an Australian listener, please clarify this for me. But the way that I understand it from listening to a podcast is given like the censorship crap that it goes through, like if it doesn't meet this censorship tag, it actually gets raised in price as kind of a markup to be able to say only the most perverted or the most psychotic would be able to afford it.
Wow.
Only adults would be able to afford it. And so I still remember like hearing when Mass Effect 3 came out, another podcast that I listened to, Ladies of Leet, where one of the women worked, I think it was for the military, and she was on an Australian base, and she actually had to, because she didn't want to wait, she had to buy Mass Effect 3 at a horrendous price. It was like, for the base game, it was like equivalent of $90 US kind of thing for that game, because she didn't want to wait. So that's some of the things that we actually have to deal with. Alex, since Romney's still trying to make his way back in here, what are your thoughts on I mean, obviously you're not going to let a snake into your console.
I would certainly hope not.
Unless it made its way in there. So
Yeah.
I really don't think there's much we can add on to this, but
It's so strange.
It's just one of those silly stories that we want to throw in here.
Yeah.
For a little bit of levity. So let's go ahead and move into the first story of tonight. And this one is a weird one because it's been 50-50. It's been confirmed. It's been denied. It's been reconfirmed. I don't frankly know where we're standing on it anymore. And that is the announcement of the Nintendo MH, which, people have noticed that we've been covering the NX a lot, and we're going to be covering it probably the rest of this year. But the MH is apparently the new. I find this funny because the last week we talked about new handhelds, and I was making the joke that it was going to be the 4DS because it was the 3DS. Now it's the 4DS, and then this happens, and then the MH gets announced. So I guess you're welcome, Internet. I didn't mean to do that, but so now we have the Nintendo MH. We don't really know too much on the matter. And like I said, depending on which outlet you're talking to, we have updates on them that say, no, this is not legit. And then literally like a day later, they'll have something from a Nintendo interview saying, no, it's possibly legit. So I'm still not sure whether or not this is a legit or this is actually happening. And if people want to actually send in stories to be able to confirm it, because right now it's solidly in rumor territory. And like I said, it's codenamed MH, not NH. A lot of people actually sent this and went the Nintendo NH. I was like, no, it's MH.
MH, yeah.
MH. And we don't even have a release date for this thing. We don't know anything about it roughly. We don't even know anything resembling a gimmick for it. only that they may be working on a new handheld. So, and there you go. Romney can rejoin. Are you here, Romney?
I will not be silenced!
Dang right. Dang right. So, just in time to be able to, unless you have any thoughts to add to the snake in the console, we're talking about the MH right now. So, uh-oh.
Well, it's not that bad. It's just that it's like, I'm like Han Solo, where I'm just going like, come on, baby, hold together.
That's all right. That's me about an hour in, because then at that point the internet's really beginning to hate me. So, yeah, let's actually go into the MH, and again, we don't really have too much information on it. So I guess at this point it's going to be strictly a speculation on like what they could possibly do to be innovative with their next handheld. I would dare say don't do the 3D thing, because I've heard of more people not using it than using it. So
Probably so.
I think
I mean, even I barely use the 3D function myself.
Yeah,
I can't. It gives me headaches.
There's only certain games where it actually like works for me, where it actually adds to the experience. But for the most part, I usually just turn it off because just in case I don't see much point.
No, for me it just gives me solid headaches, and so I just don't use it at all.
I mean, a lot of people, if I might, a lot of people are, speculating that it might integrate with Nintendo's brand of mobile gaming now, which I could kind of see. I don't know how, obviously how, I'm not an engineer, so what do I know, really? But
I wouldn't be surprised by that, honestly. I really wouldn't. That's something that sounds like it would be right up their alley. It's not the kind of integration I want. Hint, hint. But, yeah, I can totally see them doing that. Like, their mobile gaming would be totally unilateral with this. I really do think that this needs to be the console generation where the handheld and the main console can be linked together and you can play them however you want. That's just me, though. Romney, your thoughts on the Nintendo MH. What would you like to see this handheld console be able to do? Are you excited for it, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, honestly, I think it's really too early to begin speculating because, well, we don't know anything. And even then, the posts that IGN is citing are still only rumor. So as for anything I would want on a new handheld, really...
Well, and here's the thing, too. The IGN article that I have for us is the clearest of them. I was able to look up, I think, a Polygon article that had constant edits where it was just like, we've officially confirmed that this isn't a thing, and then literally another edit. Oh, in a Nintendo interview with one of the developers, they subtly hint that it is a thing. So it's just one of those things where we don't know anything.
Yeah, honestly, like the 3DS as a design works pretty well. I guess the only thing I would say is that just maybe beef up the processing power, maybe have it a way to communicate with the mobile games, but keep the gimmicks to a minimum because I mean because not only is the 3D kind of annoying, but also the gyro controls and having to tilt the system, which isn't very conducive to simply playing a game on the bus and trying to relax. And so really all I would say is you beef it up a little bit, keep the clamshell design because that's actually a really good design because it makes it easy to just pick up and play. But I would just say keep the gimmicks to a minimum because we don't need motion, we don't need 3D. You can keep the cameras because some games do find a way to make the cameras work, like Spirit Camera, for example.
I was actually going to ask, the cameras have like some level of FaceTime like the Wii U does, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at that point, keep that concept. I know a lot of people that like that. The art program, obviously, I know a lot of people like that with the stylus. But yeah, get rid of the 3D, get rid of the whole motion gimmick. That was kind of dumb. I have a feeling that if Amiibo functionality is going to be available for the NX, you need to make it available for the MH.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially considering that it's not that hard to make it NFC compatible. I mean,
yeah.
And so that's probably almost a given at this point. But as for everything else, I mean, we're entering in a different era for Nintendo as a company, so we'll see whether or not they're going to try to get away from some of the gimmicks or if they're going to try to have some sort of gimmick because, well, let's face it, it's Nintendo. So it could go either way, but we're definitely in one of those weird, awkward periods of transition.
Yeah. Now, Alex, I was actually trying to get to your thought before Romney came back in. So your thoughts on the MH?
Well, it's like Rodney said, we're just too early, and this is all hearsay and rumor and speculation at this point. It's just a matter of waiting to see. I don't
Yeah.
know. I really can't say too much about what the next handheld of Nintendo will bring. It's an interesting considering with as much as much of mobile gaming is taking over that Nintendo's still able to hold to the handheld market as strongly as they are. So I'm still interested. And at least with unlike with the recent NX unveiling, I'm not having quite as much buyer's remorse because I bought my 3DS quite a few years ago now.
By unveiling, you mean like the announcement for March and all that?
Yeah.
Like, we haven't seen the console yet, right?
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't say unveiling, just the announcement.
Like, don't give me a heart attack like that. I'm already backed up enough as is. My thoughts are pretty much along the same line as you guys. At this point, it's strictly rumor. We don't really know too much about it, but I probably would have the same concept, is that, or the same opinion here. I don't think it should have too many gimmicks. It should be updated as far as graphically what it can do, its processing time, its speed, things like that. But take things like the 3D and the motion out. If you want to keep the social stuff like the cameras and things like that, I'm okay with that. Even I find a little bit of fun here and there with that. So,
are there even a lot of games that do the whole motion thing? Because I've never seen any real motion games with 3DS.
I don't know.
The games I've played, Spirit Camera is kind of one of them. Rhythm Thief uses it. Pilot Wings uses it. I'm just going off. I'm literally just looking at my shelf here. Yeah, but I know Rhythm Thief uses it. Pilot Wings for 3DS uses it. Spirit Camera somewhat, but that's more because that's more at the discretion of just having to use the cameras and moving that around.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there are a few others that use the motion controls, specifically when you're having to tilt for various things. Like, I think, Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time also use the motion controls because you have to tilt it in order to stay balanced when you're walking across a tightrope sort of thing. Yeah, stuff like that is where, stuff like that where it's minimal, I didn't mind. Rhythm Thief was where it was problematic, is because in one of them rhythm mini games, you have to tilt it in time to the music, and you're just like, well, great, I can't see a thing, so I'm literally having to guess.
Uh-huh. So at that point, I'm more interested to hear what the tech specs are going to be for this after we unveil the NX, because I have a feeling they're not going to be announced together. And again, I hope beyond hope, and I dream beyond dream. Please let me connect this to my main console so that I can play the handheld games on TV if I want to, things like that. But I'm kind of in there too. We need more information. So final thoughts before we move to the next story, because we've got an inspirational one right after. I think that's it. So the next story that we have, I think, happened on Monday, and it caught my eye, and it actually literally brought a tear to my eye. I love when stories like this happen. So I'm trying to think, do they actually have the kid's name? So a little kid by the name of Shane Hickey, I feel bad for his name, but we still love you, Shane. Shane actually came up, so out of his love for Overwatch, he actually created a character. And so the image, we'll actually put up the image in a little bit. But
actually, it's
Shane
his
Hickey's
daughter.
Yeah.
Oh, Shane Hickey's daughter. The daughter actually came up with a homemade character and named it Burst. And then Shane decided, or I guess she wanted to be able to see her character in Overwatch or whatever. And Shane, her dad, decided to submit it to the Overwatch Twitter, which it actually caught the attention of an artist for Blizzard named Roman Kenny, and he decided to give the character life, so to speak. He actually went in and did a concept art design in the Overwatch style for this character Burst. Now, before I show the image, guys, this is not a confirmed character or anything like that. This is just an artist trying to do a good thing for a fan. And so at that point, let me go ahead and show you the image that we have of Burst. Here we go. So there you go. That is Burst. And if you can see on the upper right corner, that is the original drawing from Shane's daughter. And yeah, in the upper one or in the upper left is the drawing plus the letter that they actually submitted. And oh my gosh, I actually want this character in the game now. Now, granted, Overwatch is having a lot of success right now. It's doing fairly well, and I'm absolutely ecstatic for that because it's a new IP from Blizzard. But I just kind of want to open this up to you guys. Your thoughts on Shane Hickey's daughter's dream of Burst coming to life via Blizzard. Alex, your thoughts on Burst?
This is so nice. It's always nice to see a company do this. I know it's mostly just the work of an artist within Blizzard's company, but even then, sometimes employees going out on their own and doing these things can not always be met with the best of circumstances by the company because it can be legal issues. Usually, usually it's like, most companies have this disclaimer. It's like entertainment media companies have this like disclaimer, like, please do not send us any material. We'll promptly just destroy it if you do. But it's just to legally cover themselves. It makes sense. But it's nice to see that somebody at Blizzard liked the little drawing so much, and he decided, hey, I want to have some fun, and I want to brighten up this child's day here, and show her just what this character would look like in Overwatch. And I would hope Blizzard would incorporate it as well fully within their game.
And not only that, but if you guys want a link to the IGN story, not only does it have the original art from Shane's daughter Ava, I think Ava is I think how you say it. You have that art, and then you have the concept art that Roman Kenny came up with. You actually also have a reaction video when Shane showed his daughter for the first time Burst. And again, brought a tear to my eye because it's one of those things that Blizzard, you will forever be awesome to me, and this is one of the main reasons why. Romney, your thoughts on Burst?
Well, I do like the design here. I mean, it is kind of cutesy and stuff, but then again, given that the character was designed by a kid, it makes sense. But I like the way it looks, and I like how this artist decided, hey, let's actually take the time and see if we can fully realize this character. It's already spawned people doing fan art, and, of course, the Change.org petition, because, of course.
Yes. So, yeah, that's the other thing that's interesting about it is that because a lot of people have loved the art that Roman Kenny did, obviously the next step the internet wanted to go to was that this character be brought to life, this character be a new character in Overwatch. I don't know how plausible that is, to be perfectly honest with you. I think there's going to be some loopholes there.
Yeah, given the weapon set, there's also kind of a game design perspective to consider, given that the main weapon is a boomerang. But based on the description that the daughter came up with, she would technically be very much a character focused on healing, so that could work in team battles, sort of. Kind of like the medic.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, you have at least 3 characters that are medic-based in Overwatch. And so at that point, adding another one is it's an added bonus as far as I'm concerned. But like I agree with you. I agree with you. The boomerang is not a whole lot to base a moveset off of. If those orbs on top are utilized, then that might be enough. But,
yeah, like if the boomerang was strictly melee, it could work. Because that's the thing, trying to code an actual projectile that's set to come back and having all that damage collision and all that, that's a bit of a pain in the ass to program. But like Alex also mentioned, there's also a lot of legal issues that could come up in regards to royalties. I mean, if Blizzard wants to do it, they would basically have to have both Shane Hickey and his daughter more or less sign a release that basically said, okay, we officially sign over our claim of this character to Blizzard. Yeah. And that would be the only way they could sidestep it, is that they would basically have to convince them to give up any rights they have to the character and fully sign it over to Blizzard. But the real question is whether or not Activision Blizzard would actually want to go to such lengths.
Yeah. The other thing, too, that they could do, and I actually think this would be the more plausible way to be able to do it, but it also is kind of the more underhanded way to do it, is to make a character inspired by Burst. And so at that point, take some of the concepts of Burst and utilize them into a brand new character, and it's not named Burst. But I don't see Blizzard going that route. If they can't utilize this character, then why would they want to make a knockoff later inspired?
Yeah.
Yeah, not to mention that. yeah, that would be a PR nightmare for one.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, because if they did that, then people would obviously complain. There would be a bit of outcry.
And they deserve that too. I mean, in all honesty, like I get people have petitioned to bring Burst into the game. I don't think that's going to happen. Granted, though, before people start ramming this down my throat, Blizzard have interjected kid-based things into other games. The only thing that I would point out to you is those had extenuating circumstances that were covered. So, for example, one of the examples that's going to get brought up is I can't remember his name right off. It's Kyle something. It was a Make-A-Wish deal where Kyle was dying of cancer, and they brought him into the studio, and they actually created a quest line based around him. And he actually, to this day, is still in the game code as the voice for the Tauren that gives you the quest.
Yeah.
But that's a different deal. That was something they actually worked out. This is not as covered as that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the issue with it. So I know that people will want to bring up things like that as examples, and guys, Blizzard would do it if they could do it legally.
Yeah, because again, if it's a Make-A-Wish scenario, that means that the Make-A-Wish Foundation does a lot of the legwork to actually bring it to reality. In this case, it's a legal nightmare. It'd be a bit of a PR nightmare. It's kind of like the same crap that the guy who came up with the Doritos taco for Taco Bell kind of went through, where Taco Bell was so afraid of any possibility of getting sued that there had to be a bunch of legal steps they had to take for it to become a reality. The guy basically had to sign a lot of paperwork saying, I have no intention of suing Taco Bell, I don't want any royalties, had to sign all that paperwork, and really it just comes down to Activision Blizzard. I doubt they would actually want to put in that kind of effort for just a fan character. I mean, if it was, say, part of like a competition maybe where they had like, oh, design an Overwatch character and that was like the grand prize, that'd be one thing, because that's something that a lot of shows did way back in the past. But there was all that legalese that one of the conditions was you sign away the rights by entering in the competition. And
And the other thing you have to consider with that is that I know that Blizzard came out and said that the roster that we have for Overwatch is going to be fixed for a while. But here's the funniest thing, is that they've literally left themselves open to have other characters. And we've seen confirmed designs in their cinematics and whatnot of other characters. And so that already tells to me that there's a list that is being developed, or of characters being developed, and so at that point, let's just say for the sake of argument, Burst gets in there. She's at the bottom of the list of, let's just say, like 5 characters, and it takes them 2 months to get out a new character. That's still a long time before you'd see Burst.
Yeah, in 2 months, that'd be like that would be a very optimistic estimate, because a lot of people may not realize
especially given Blizzard.
Yeah, given Blizzard, but also given just what it would actually take to add a character to a first-person shooter that isn't based on like anything that's pre-existing in the game code. I mean, with the design itself, there'd be a lot of things. Like, not only is there the modeling issue, but there'd be a lot of the other factors of making everything balanced and everything. The differences in height and all of that.
Creating movesets, things like that. Yeah, because
so
Overwatch is littered with characters that don't match. And so at that point, I mean, they already have to reconsider that whole aspect each time they come up with a new character.
Mm-hmm.
So, Alex, your thoughts on Burst? Or no, we already covered your viewpoint. So final thoughts on Burst before we move over to the next story. I hope you get look, Ava, Shane, I hope you get your wish. I hope you get to see this character in game. I'm just unfortunately on the negative end here. I think if they do it, then it's going to be kind of an uphill struggle, and frankly, we're going to have to wait a long time to be able to even see this character, much less be able to play it. So, I don't know. Here's hoping at BlizzCon 2016. But, yeah, I don't know. Let's go ahead and move into the next story here. And this is a story that I'm really worried is going to get me thrown off the podcast, and it's my own freaking podcast. So, this is something that has been covered throughout the week in our thread as well as on YouTube. there's been developments literally all week on it. In fact, I think the first story that I think it was you, Alex, that submitted it was like on Monday or Tuesday, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, I'm the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I found through one of the many news sources on YouTube that I follow about this that YouTube user H3H3 was now being sued by another YouTube user. So all I had really was a video link to post there from H3H3 directly, describing the circumstances, what's going on here.
And here's the thing too, like you basically put up the second video on the matter because there was the offending video, which at this point we're assuming is under DMCA lock on H3H3, although we're starting to have other channels re-uploading it. So at that point, let's cover some of the facts here. H3H3.
Yeah, particularly the people who run the channel, Ethan and Gila of H3H3,
are being sued by Matt Haas I'm probably gonna
Matt Hosseinzadeh,
aka Bold Guy. And so what they were doing in this video was they were watching one of Bold Guy's, I'm guessing earlier videos of him. It was like hitting on a woman working out, and well, it was kind of douchey. I mean, I actually had to go dig up the offending video because I wanted to see what actually got Matt so offended by it. And frankly, I mean, so before I get into that, the next step obviously was that Matt was offended and immediately reached out to H3H3 and threatened to sue them if they didn't take the video down. Basically along the lines of so he had lawyered up, and I think it was actually the lawyer that contacted them, and the lawyer basically said, "Pay me $4,000, and you could keep the video up, or no, I think you have to take the video down and pay $4,000."
Yeah, there were also additional demands where basically like pay $4,000, take down the video, do 2 weeks of free promotion for his channel, and then they basically would drop the suit.
Yeah, and so at that point, they didn't do that. And so now it's an official lawsuit. They are being sued by Matt Haas, a.k.a. Bold Guy. I'm just going to use H3H3 and Bold Guy because that's the best way to describe it, at least for me. And in turn, H3H3 decided to reach out to their community and say, yes, we're being sued, and this is a big deal. And they actually looked over their finances and came to the rough estimation that it would take at max $100,000 to be able to take care of this lawsuit because it would take a couple of years to be able to do so, which obviously got the YouTube community fired up because another YouTuber went to, which one was it? GoFundMe.
Basically, Philip DeFranco bamfs in, sets up a GoFundMe page. They didn't even ask him to do it. He did it of his own volition. That he literally just comes in and says, hey, these guys are being sued, and this case could have some very dangerous precedent for all other YouTubers, so let's set up this GoFundMe so we can help cover their legal fees because, well, this shit be whacked.
So at that point, they said at max it would take $100,000. The GoFundMe, at least the last number I heard, was that it was at $117,000. And in turn, H3H3 came out and did another video saying, so we've actually done the estimation here. We don't think we're going to use all 100,000. So at that point, the lawyers, which were YouTube lawyers roughly, who reached out to H3H3 on this matter, they decided to take that $117,000, or at least the GoFundMe.
Yeah, looking at it, I have the GoFundMe open right now. The number they're currently at is $154,760, and that was over the course of 3 days.
So at that point, it's pretty much up to the lawyers and H3H3's jurisdiction. And so at that point, they're basically saying that, yes, we're going to use some of this money to be able to cover this lawsuit, but in the future, we're also going to try and help out the people who are also getting these fair use-esque suits put on them.
Specifically, and it's kind of a detail you forgot to mention, is that
there's tons of details I forgot here.
Well, basically, what Ethan and Gila have decided to do is that they're going to take the money that has been raised on this GoFundMe page and they're going to put it in an escrow account that is going to be in the control of the law firm. I don't remember the name of the exact law firm. I'm trying to look it up here. Yeah, but basically it's going to be in the control of the lawyers that are representing them in this case to basically pay them, since up until now they were basically working pro bono, which means they weren't being paid anything. And so
originally they actually said that they would the two lawyers actually said they would come in free. Right?
Yeah,
they would come in pro. Yeah, I know. They said they literally came in for the beginning negotiations and were working pro bono. So at that point, then Philip DeFranco put up the GoFundMe. And now they're going to be able to get funded, or at least some level of funds for their work. And I have a feeling they'll even cut corners to be able to keep this cheap.
Well, yeah, and the idea is that they're basically putting it in the escrow account that's officially labeled as the Fair Use Protection Account. And what this is that, like, basically what this is that'll basically be kind of like a fund, kind of like a YouTuber's union, that if any YouTuber, big or small, is being threatened with a lawsuit by a larger company after this case, they can email this law firm, they will go over the case, see if it's a case they can actually take on, that they can actually defend in court, and then the money from that escrow account will be used to cover the legal fees incurred in that particular legal battle. And that's that's the idea behind the FUPA, as they called it, is to basically, so that way, the idea is that even after this lawsuit is settled, it'll still be there because, well, this isn't the first time someone sued a YouTuber over fair use, and it most certainly won't be the last. And the reason why this is such a big deal, and it was something that we all kind of discussed, is that this will be the first time where fair use will actually have a defined precedent in the court, in a U.S. court, when applied to YouTube, because that's something that hasn't happened. I mean, we have Lens versus Universal, but that's not a strong enough precedent. This is the first time we actually have someone suing an actual reviewer of a video, and that's why so many YouTubers, like the Fine Brothers, like Philip DeFranco, like Notch, the creator of Minecraft, who kicked in like $5,000. That's why so many people on YouTube are getting up in arms. I mean, even I've kicked in I even kicked in like $30 to kind of add to it because, well, this is a big deal.
And so, I think we've pretty much covered a lot of the major details that had to be covered here. I'm glad that you brought up the Fine Brothers because, I mean, you could say that the video itself, the offending video, is a critique. I would dare say it's more along the lines of a React video like the Fine Brothers would probably put out. But it could go either way. So let's just kind of open this up to the panel. Alex, your thoughts on, is this a good, obviously, this could be either a good thing or a bad thing because this is going to be bringing it out to the court system, or at least to the civil court system. So at that point, is it a good thing that this is being brought this way? Is it a bad thing? Your thoughts on the whole shtick?
Well, I mean, I certainly hope it's a good thing. I hope it can end well. It's a lawsuit. It's going to be left to what sounds like it's going to possibly go to a jury, by the way, the Matt and Gila described thing. So it is going to be a kind of to the whim of 12 people and civil suits, and it's going to take a while. It is sad that it has come to this, but let's hope that this can set some kind of precedent. I'm really glad that they decided to go ahead, make this fund to have other people get legal counsel, legal advice. I don't know if you could say it's counsel, but legal advice for when they need it, if that they too come under fire like this. And, well, it is just, we're going to have to keep an eye on this as it unfolds. It's going to be months in the process.
It's going to be years, actually.
It's going to be years,
Probably, years.
I think at minimum,
2 years.
Was saying like 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, because
there's going to take.
Yeah, because there's a follow-up video that I saw that's done by a professional copyright attorney by the name of Leonard French that actually broke down the process of what they are actually going to have to go through. He looked up the lawsuit, looked up who the judge is, which oddly enough is the judge who was on the Silk Road case, so she actually has experience presiding over a trial regarding an internet issue, so that can either be a good thing or a bad thing. I don't entirely know all the details of the Silk Road case in particular, but that's at least a better sign that we actually have someone who has some experience presiding over such a case, so there's that. And I hear a lot of people talking about the jury presiding over this case. That's not what this kind of case is. This is not a case that's actually going to be going to a jury. This is a case that's going to be presided over by a judge, and the judge will be making that decision.
This is a civil matter, and so at that point, it's going to be put in front of a judge, not necessarily a jury.
So it is a bench trial, not a jury trial.
It's a bench trial. Lawsuits rarely go in front of a jury. I don't think there's even been a lawsuit that's been brought to a jury in the history of the U.S. legal system.
The best way to be able to look at like a jury kind of thing, at least the way that I understood it, I actually had to go talk to a friend of mine who's a corporate attorney, and it's mostly the juries are used more in the criminal side of law. But as far as exchanges like this, as far as civil lawsuits, it's usually just up to a judge to say this is the person at fault and this is what you are awarded or not awarded. So at that point, Romney, your thoughts on the lawsuit as it's going on right now?
Well, like I've already mentioned, I've donated to the legal fund, and I definitely hope that this case sets the precedent needed, because that's the big thing that's been hindering a lot of the copyright issues on YouTube, is that there hasn't been a precedent set, because nobody predicted that the internet would become as big as it has when they were first drafting the initial copyright laws. Yeah. And so hopefully the case will go well, but it's going to be a long process. They first have the discovery process, where both the defendant and the plaintiff, basically both legal teams, are tasked to gather evidence for either case, which means digging up any videos, digging up any information. Honestly, though, the lawyer representing Matt Hosseinzadeh, honestly, I don't know if he's going to do very well, given that there are a lot of false claims and false allegations made in the lawsuit placed it's going to bite them in the ass, to be honest. I mean, there's the accusation that they wrongfully raised funds through Kickstarter, even though Ethan and Gila have never set up a Kickstarter in the history of their channel. So there's that. And so you have a lawyer and a plaintiff making false claims that are asking for damages based on something that they haven't actually done. And so I understand I'm being completely optimistic here, but that's something that I feel is definitely going to hurt them in the long run, unless they decide to amend the suit, which they can do since it hasn't gone to trial yet. But even then, it's still very much a case of that's something that if the legal team isn't going to go after in court, they probably should, because that's a good way to kind of damage the credibility there and say, hey, did you do any research to actually ascertain whether or not there were any damages? And so, yeah, I'm optimistic because, like I mentioned, we've got a judge who's presided over internet-related cases before, so we at least have someone who has some idea of how the internet works. She's a fairly young judge, not like super young, but it's kind of a case of we at least have someone who isn't out of touch with the 21st century. And so I hate that it came to this, but hopefully this will be the start of a good thing and not the start of a very dangerous downward spiral for YouTube.
Yeah. Can we go to Alex again? Can I just not give my opinion on this one?
Well, the show is called Geek News Reviews and Opinions.
It's one of those things where I'm really worried about giving my opinion, because we've seen this year when I give my opinion, it works out so well. Okay. I saw this story and I actually wrestled with whether or not to bring it up on the agenda, because it's a lawsuit, and I cannot think of a bigger thing on this podcast aside from politics that I would want to bring to it, which is lawsuits, because lawsuits are such knockdown, drag-out affairs. It doesn't matter if you're on the right side or the wrong side. Everything gets blurred. Everything gets rayed. And I just didn't know especially after we'd gotten the one, we'd had 2 lawsuits this year, one of which was a divorce settlement, which basically said that the wife got the husband's YouTube channel. Man, that already set nightmares for me. And then the other one was the 2, I can't remember the exact details, but it was like a 4-way partnership, and 2 of them were doing improper practices, have been pretty much blacklisted by YouTube now, and the others actually won the channel from them.
If you think that's bad, you should look at what happened to the guy behind Pervert Pete. That's some messed up stuff.
I don't want to. I'm already worried about this one, Romney.
I'm curious.
I'll give you the quick rundown. Basically, Pervert Pete is a character made by a YouTuber who basically trolls people on Omegle, but as part of a joint custody settlement over custody over his daughter, he was basically ordered by the court to abandon the channel, that he could no longer do Pervert Pete as a condition of him allowing him to have custody of his daughter. That's how scary this is getting.
Why was that? Why did they force him to do that?
Well, I don't want to go into full detail here, but if you're curious, the Mysterious Mr. Enter did a whole video explaining it and explaining just how messed up it is. He goes into a much greater detail than I have time to do here, but, well, let's just say you're worried about the whole knockout, drag-out thing of lawsuits at him. It's only going to get rougher from here, I'm afraid.
Yeah. No, and I completely get that, and whether or not we cover the rest, I don't know. Okay. I already didn't know if I wanted to put it up here because of the whole lawsuit angle. The second thing I didn't want to do it was I went and did my homework. I watched all of the H3H3 videos. I watched, in part, unfortunately my internet cut out at that point, and so I wasn't able to finish it, the Leonard French video that I think you put up, Rodney, going into the analysis of the lawsuit. And I watched the offending video. I watched all of the updates. I watched everything that I could possibly watch. And so the conclusions that I kind of came to was, obviously, I have a lot of questions, and a lot of those have not been answered. One of which is that, let me put out my opinion first before I go into the details. Frankly, this is going to be a lawsuit that's going to be knocked down, drag out, and frankly, I'm not siding with anybody on this one because, frankly, as far as I am concerned, after watching all of those videos, I think they're both equally douchebaggery enough that I don't want to support either of them. And that's both to Matt Haas and H3H3. And I'm saying this honestly, that I don't like their content. And you know what? I have a right to say I don't like their content. And frankly, I think as much as Matt Haas is being a very anal douchebag about getting made fun of on a reaction video, I also think that H3H3 could have used better wording on some of the jokes, quote, jokes that they made. And so at that point, I'm not on either of their side. However this lawsuit goes, I'll watch from the sidelines and go, okay. The other thing, too, that obviously I had a concern about was the whole fair use protection account. And it's mainly because they make the claim of that this is going to be to support both the big guys and the, quote, little guys. And I looked everywhere to be able to have them define big guys and little guys. Because my concern here is that, obviously, when I saw this, I went to absolute nightmare scenario in my head. I was like, okay, what happens, for the sake of argument, if... I'm not trying to pick on anybody here, but you're the one with the highest subscriber count, Romney. Romney gets sued for his viewpoints on a particular movie, channel, however he wants to go, and he gets sued for it. And he puts in a petition to be able to get funds from this fair use account. Who's to say what defines a big guy and a little guy in that case? I could honestly see this law firm saying, well, maybe they could dismiss it basically saying they don't have a case when they might actually have one. It just might take a little bit more effort than they're willing to admit, but they'd rather put that money towards a bigger YouTube channel like H3H3 where they can get that exposure, they can get all of that stuff happening. The other thing that you brought up, Romney, obviously, is that these guys probably aren't state certified or amongst various amounts of states in their bars. So at that point, it's not like they can come out and represent you. And at that point, you kind of want them. I know that they'd probably want to recommend you to a lawyer that is in your area and that they recommend. But in some cases, you might want them to represent you because they get it. So at that point, that's a concern to me, and actually is that, and amongst other issues, is why I have not funded this. I know that we have supported Where's the Fair Use, and you know what? I do. I still support Where's the Fair Use, and there's still a bunch of problems with it. I'm talking about the YouTube system. But at the same time, this lawsuit to me just reeks of problems left and right, and already I'm thinking that the worst possible scenario is going to come out of this, just from my own perspective. That no online content creator is going to come out of this and not have 10 different questions of, oh, are you one of those crazies that went into that lawsuit? And frankly, those are questions I don't want to answer at any family party or whatever. And this case might actually do that. So
yeah, but at the same time, I mean, as much as a lot of people like to talk about like various grand sweeping like court cases that have defined the history of America, if you actually lived during the time of a lot of those court cases, it's never been a pretty process. It really hasn't. I mean, if you look, for example, I mean, there's even been cases that have gone really poorly, like the Dred Scott decision, for example. So it's ugly, and it's.
I mean, say the word lawsuit and see how many people run for the hills. That's literally what you can think on that.
Yeah, it's ugly, it's unpleasant, but I think because of where YouTube is going where internet video in general is going as an industry, it's one of the many growing pains of the industry. It's one of the fights that needs to be fought.
Yeah.
Whether or not I'm wearing the golden helmet of Mambrino or just a shaving basin by saying it, it is still a fight that needs to be fought.
And you know what? I agree with you on that. This is one of those things that needs to be fought. It's just one of those things where I would have liked a more, at least in my opinion, cut and dry case of, I don't know. The example that came to my mind was, I can't remember the channel's name, but it was in the Doug Walker video of the one guy who got mad because of his.
Is it I Hate Everything?
I don't remember who it was. It was the cartoon dog that was some other guy's creation, and then.
Yeah, I think you're thinking of Cool Cat, which isn't cartoon, but you're thinking of the whole thing with Derek Savage.
Yes.
Trying to get those videos taken down. And yeah, that is another example. It's just he didn't actually bring it to trial, but more or less tried to extort the YouTubers. But because of enough community backlash and YouTube eventually having to step in and say, yeah, this is fair use, you don't have a case here, that's when it was finally resolved. And honestly, I think the only reason we're seeing these smaller people agitating it is because the larger companies that could probably do more damage and do these knockdown, drag-out lawsuits realize that it's not a battle they want to fight because that is very bad PR.
It is, and but what I'm saying is, like, to me, that case was cut and dry. There was a victor in there, because public opinion is going to come on the side of the YouTuber in that regard. Granted, there's going to be some public opinion that comes down on the other creator, but I wanted to be able to have that. And this case just looks so 50-50 to me that it could literally go either way.
Yeah, but keep in mind, the court of public opinion is not an actual court. And that's why this is as big a deal as it is, because the fact that this is being brought before an actual judge is what's basically the big deciding factor, because then there will actually be a case on the books that other lawyers can look to and say, hey, there's this case that sets this precedent for this type of case. And that's something that a lot of lawyers would be able to argue. That's something that lawyers do today in regards to cases in the past based on various precedents set in the past. And so that's why, I mean, yeah, I understand where you're coming from, where they may not be the best YouTubers to have this happen to, but it's kind of one of those cases where this is how this sort of thing happens.
Well, and before people start jumping down my throat that I should be supporting H3H3, again, that's one of those things that lands into the purview of, that's my call. If I want to subscribe to H3H3, I'll subscribe to H3H3. And that's
I don't think it's a matter of subscribing. I think people are going to be a little more upset that, well, you're not kind of standing behind him in the lawsuit because he is trying to fight for his essential rights to make these contents. That's kind of weird to say. Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied, but that's kind of what I'm seeing here is you're taking the very middle ground when, well, essentially it feels like we should essentially all be in the same boat here, where we're constantly under the pressures, under the threats of having any of our content yanked at any time. I've already gone through this months ago. I'm still under copyright strike.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, like this is a phrase I like to throw around whenever Adam or Alex bring up issues that they're afraid to talk about on the show. But it's a saying that I often throw around, and it's that nothing is more dangerous than an echo chamber. So,
Yes.
I mean, people may give Adam crap for not siding with either way, but, well, nothing's more dangerous than an echo chamber. If you basically have if we're all agreeing on the same thing, we're not going to have much of a show either, because there's not going to be much to discuss.
At that point, like, exactly. That's why this show works. But at the same time,
in your credit, Adam, I've been weary of lawsuits in the past when things like this have come out, and people say this needs to go to court, right? Like when Nintendo started rolling out the more aggressive content ID, and people were saying this needs to go to court. And I'm like, even back then, I was like, no, that's such a bad idea, because then we're left at the mercy of a judge who may be completely out of tune with what YouTube is and how the internet works, and might just
frankly, before Romney actually said the judge, I was worried about that too. So.
Yeah, so I guess I can see where you're coming from, because I've had the same nerves and reactions that potentially going to court, but Romney, I think, has been able to at least put into a little perspective for me that this is probably a battle that does need to be fought in court at the end of the day.
No, and here's the thing. I agree. It does need to be fought in court. In fact, I'm probably going to go along the same lines of a saying as you did, Romney, but to me, I think it was Breitbart that actually quoted this, but in some cases, sunlight is the best disinfectant. In fact, in all cases, sunlight is the best disinfectant. If you don't bring these problems to light, then they don't get solved. That's kind of along the same lines that you were saying about the echo chamber. If you don't bring it to the echo chamber, then nothing's ever going to get done. People are going to remain quiet, and in some cases, just because I'm not supporting the two involved in this matter doesn't necessarily mean that I don't support the values that are there. I still will support where's the fair use. I still will support that YouTube needs to change this system, and it needs to support the YouTubers that, in my opinion, do the work for these big companies so much that I almost want to make the argument that the big companies should be paying us to do it, and they're not paying us for it. And the other thing that also just gets on my case, or on the whole thing, is being able to hire companies to specifically throw out copyright strikes here and there. They're not even involved in the matter. So I can support this without necessarily getting involved in this particular suit. I don't have to subscribe to H3H3 to voice my opinion on the matter. It's just the fact that this is being brought out into the light of day. That's the best that I think Romney's trying to get here, is we don't have to like the parties here. The fact that this issue is being brought to the light of day is all that matters.
Because honestly, that's how it's been with a lot of these lawsuits. I mean, that's just how it is that you can't always choose the players in the story. You just gotta make do with the roles that have been cast. I mean, you may not like the actor. You may not like the actors, but they're the ones putting on the play, and that's what you've got to deal with for however long it takes.
Yep, and at that point, like them, hate them, at least the issue is being discussed. And actually, again, one of the issues that I had, and I'm glad Romney cleared it up, was I didn't know anything on the judge. I may not have gotten to that point where Leonard French actually brings that up, but yeah, the fact that we're having a judge that has dealt with an internet case before, or internet issues before, that's a little bit more heartening to me, because they literally could have gotten a very out-of-touch judge.
Yeah, and keep in mind, with California, their judges tend to be a lot more progressive. They tend to be more on top of those sort of things. If this was the case in Texas, then you'd have to be really worried, because that's where a lot of patent trolls like to take their lawsuits, is to a Texas courtroom.
I don't know.
That's not a knock against Texans,
as far as I'm concerned.
Well, yeah, that's not a knock against Texans in general, but that is something that has been a problem with various state cases. And so the fact that they were able to get this judge who presided over the Silk Road case, that shows, okay, at least that means that we're actually getting at least someone who's at least somewhat knowledgeable of the internet. Yeah. Granted, the Silk Road is a very, very, very strange case in and of itself, since you're dealing with the deep web and all that entails. But at the very least, we have someone who at least is aware of the internet and may be in a bit better position to give a fair ruling.
Yeah. So, any other final thoughts that we want to add to this before we move on to the next story? Because I think we've pretty much, for as much as we actually could here, because there's tons of stuff that we didn't even cover. That's how interlaced this whole thing is right now because of the lawsuit. Is there anything else that we want to add to this before we kind of wrap things up and move to the next story?
You know, I do admire his courage for going ahead with this and taking it to court. I'm talking about H3H3 and you know, wanting to go ahead and battle this out. I mean, I hate to say it, but I probably would have taken the easy route out and just pay out and just be done with it, because Lord knows I can't afford an attorney. So
well,
I'm glad
if you can even pay out, that's the thing.
Yeah,
if you can even pay it out.
I mean, but so good for him. I'm glad people are at least trying to get behind this in some way, even if, like you, Adam, they might need to take a bit of a neutral stance. And me and Romney are both in the same camp. We've both given money to the GoFundMe page, so it's just good luck to them all, and I hope this does get resolved in court as quickly as it can. I mean, lawsuits do take a long time. We've established that, but
yeah,
let's hope it all comes out.
I'd have no problem supporting this. I just want some questions answered. And in my defense here, I've actually reached out and I've asked these specific questions, not necessarily to those attorneys. I've reached out to other attorneys I'm aware that I know of, as well as open letters to. No, not those attorneys, but another one that I know of online that I wanted to see if I can get some of these questions answered. If they come out the way that is ideal to me, I'd support this with finance. But until then, I'm staying neutral.
Yeah, and another thing I just kind of to add as a final point is that this is going to be a long fight. It's not going to be something that's going to be wrapped up overnight, unless suddenly Matt Hassanzadeh decides to drop the suit overnight. That would be the quickest resolution. But even then, it looks like neither side is going to back down in this particular case, given that it's going to trial, given that they have a judge. And so what we're looking at here is going to take a really, really long time. At least 2 years, maybe longer, depending on whether or not this case gets kicked up to higher level courts or not.
Well, I'd like to quote my friend here, because when I told him the number that was being thrown around, he looked at me, he laughed very heartily, and said, 2 years is very optimistic. So, because at minimum, like he was making an estimate, it'd probably take like 4 or 5. 4 or 5 for this to resolve, because motions and things like that get thrown around. So let's go ahead and before we move on to the next story, this is another one where I like to reemphasize. Leave your comments down below. I would love to hear you guys' opinions on the matter. You guys continue to amaze me on angles that maybe we didn't even consider, and the panel loves to hear from you guys. In fact, it's funny because I actually brought one of the comments that we got from last week on, I think it was, we were talking about the Stardew Valley mod, and we got a comment about a game called Is Defense that was coming out and whether or not we would support it. And I brought that up. I was like, do you guys have anything to add? And they all added it in the comments, and I'm like, I kind of meant in the comments on YouTube, but okay, we'll go with this. So I do love it when you guys get in there, so leave a comment below. Give us your opinion. If you think I'm full of crap, if you think Alex is full of crap, let us know, because we'd be more than happy to look at that. I'm obviously going to the absolute negative here. That's where I'm at right now. So let's go ahead and move into the entertainment portion tonight, and we have another kind of heartfelt story that I wanted to interject, because obviously, lawsuit. So not only did we get the Overwatch story, but we also got another one that just went right to my heart zones when I saw it. And that was a U.S. police officer came to the aid of a 9-year-old Pokemon fan after his beloved collection of cards, Pokemon cards, was stolen by a local hoodlum. Now, they were able to chase down, quote, hoodlum and be able to get a majority of the cards back, but the way that other stories have actually said that some of the rarer ones were no longer in the folder anymore. And so that obviously disappointed young Bryce, the 6-year-old that got his Pokemon collection stolen.
Yeah, 9-year-old. It's that he's been collecting it since he was 6, but he's 9.
Yeah, he was 9 at the time. But thankfully, the officer was a fellow Pokemon fan himself, and in fact collected cards as well. And so, out of the goodness of his heart, Officer, I think his name is George Grotenrath, or
James Grotenrath.
Yeah, thank you. I could not say that name to save my life. He actually came back the next day and gave some of his collection, or was it some or was it all of his collection? I think it was some of it. He contributed some of his own collection to young Bryce to compensate for the cards he lost. Freaking awesome, as far as I am concerned. This is one of those stories where, again, I'm not trying to be political, but when people go, you need to hate the police or whatever, I want to throw this story at them. Because, look, I'm not saying that they're all good cops or bad cops. There's a 50-50 thing there. But then we have stories like this that just go right to your heart zones and make you feel all them feelings. And it makes me just want to, first of all, stand up and give this guy a standing freaking ovation for doing something that he didn't need to do. So I'm going to open up to you. Alex, your thoughts on Officer Grottenrath and his decision to help out young Bryce.
This is so nice. I'm glad that we got to have two really great stories of people just trying to do something nice for somebody else. And certainly, right now, obviously, without getting too deep into politics, certainly there's a lot of issues when it comes to law enforcement in the United States. There's a lot of issues that have to be discussed there. But, when you get stories like these that can at least show you that not everything is all doom and gloom. Not everything is bad, especially on this show. Sometimes I think even on the show we might unfortunately get a little bit too deep in the negative. I don't think we necessarily try. It's just sometimes the industry goes off and does dumb things.
Sometimes we really don't even have a choice in the matter.
Sometimes we just get bad weeks where the industry's just doing nothing but stupid things. But this week, we got two great cases of people, one industry related, one outside, just trying to brighten someone else's day up a little bit. And certainly when for a kid, I can only imagine what it's like to have something stolen from you. Actually, I've had stuff stolen from me as a child. I think we all have at some point. But it makes you feel horrible, especially when you're that young, and it just makes you. It just shatters your confidence with people, with everything around you. So when someone can reach out and help you out after going through such a terrible little thing, well, it really makes you feel good. And I'm great on this police officer for helping out this kid. I think it's so cool that he still had his Pokemon cards after so many years.
In fact, let me interject here, because there's actually a quote from the officer here that I want to read. In the story that we have from Nintendo Life. I grew up with Pokemon. I loved Pokemon as a kid, and I would be heartbroken too if my cards were taken from me. It's better to see someone else smile, and in my book, like my partner says, it's just happy to see a citizen smile instead of always frowning upon us and looking the other way. I think that says it all. That a fan understood a fan's plight and decided to help. Which that's the best way to be able to go about things, especially amongst the geek community. Like, we can have our differences on whether or not the Zelda game should be this or that. But the fact that we can come together and be able to enjoy these properties as much as we do and share our love for them, that is something entirely different and something that I really believe should be supported more, especially in this internet culture when we can be so divided on these issues. And I also do want to end. I love how this story ends, which is like, if that story doesn't warm your heart, then you're as cold as a vanillish. That's
Very
a Pokemon.
That is a Pokemon.
Yes.
Romney, your thoughts on this story?
Well, I don't really have much else to add. I mean, good on this cop for basically saying, hey, it sucks this happened, but hey, I have these Pokemon cards, and because granted, given that he's a police officer, that doesn't really allow for a lot of time to continue to play the game. So it's and so really good on him, because I've been there. I've seen what happens when trading card games were stolen, because my entire family was really into Yu-Gi-Oh, and there was a guy that tried stealing my younger brother's cards back at Game Den, back when it was at Valley Fair. But then after seeing that he stole from a little kid, he then realized that he hit rock bottom and gave them back. And then there's the Point being, it sucks that we still have people stealing trading cards because, well, that's equally messed up. But good on this officer for stepping up and saying, hey, I know how you're feeling. Here are these cards. I am not able to enjoy them anymore, so here you go.
Yeah, in fact, I can relate to that too. I mean, this is going to be kind of an embarrassing story, but I'll go ahead and tell it. After I got out, I think it was Yu-Gi-Oh had started like right as soon as I was getting ready to graduate high school, and I loved the card designs and the art, and I actually got in, like, people had tried to get me into Magic and all that stuff, but Yu-Gi-Oh was really the one that made me want to try out a card game like that. And so I actually picked it up, and it just so happened on one day where my little brother at the time brought in his friend, and his friend unfortunately had a really bad reputation for, well, taking stuff that was shiny and didn't belong to him. And I accidentally left, like, I was messing around with a deck that day, and I accidentally left it out, and he took it. And so I literally, like, I got disheartened that day because I'd already spent a good deal of money on those cards, and I loved it, and it was one of those things where I was at a very dark time in my life and had very few things that made me happy, and for some reason going into the numbers of Yu-Gi-Oh did that. I was a weird kid, and so I was actually heartened when the parents, or the I think it was the dad of the kid, came over with the deck. And he said he knew that his son had done something wrong when he saw that, and he knew that he couldn't have afforded that. So it was one of those, like, I had one of those stories where it could have ended up positive. There are tons of other stories where it goes negative, and it's always a sad thing to see happen. But I'm at least happy that this officer stepped up and was a fellow Pokemon fan and contributed some of his rarer cards to this kid's collection. If anything, I would love to know what cards he got that maybe he didn't have before. Because this guy was old enough, maybe he had like that super rare Charizard.
Though keep in mind, with Pokemon, Nintendo and Wizards of the Coast made the stupid decision to re-release their first edition, so it may have been rare in the past, but it's not as rare because, again, I don't know what the hell they were thinking when they did that, but...
Mm-hmm. So, final thoughts. Otherwise, we will go ahead and move into the next story here.
I do love this comment. I just read it. Where is
Go ahead.
it? Oh, yeah. James Gronoff used Baton Pass. Another clever Pokemon reference there.
Wow. That's really sad that I know it. Because I can't keep track of these new moves to save my life. But I know what Baton Pass is, so... All right, so let's go ahead and move on into the next story, and this one has created internet controversy. And that is that we have imagery that has been released for the new Mega Man cartoon. We talked about it a couple of months ago when it was being announced that we were going to start working on it. And now we have a concept art design, or not a concept art, this is a finalized version for the new Mega Man in this series. And so I'm just going to go ahead and put up an image really quick so that people can judge it. Here it is. Here is the Mega Man for the new cartoon. Obviously, it does still hold true to a lot of the themes that the Blue Bomber is known for, but it does take a couple of new liberties to it. And obviously, that's been the thing that the internet has been reacting to, because even if you go to the bottom end of this story, the controversy has begun well before then, because they even got some sample Twitter posts right after, which can either be positive, like saying this is a great concept, he still looks blue, he still looks like this looks like it'll be a good series, and then you have people who are constantly bringing up that, well, their childhood got raped, or the fact that things could have been much, much worse, and bringing up the golden blue Mega Man that we all try very, very hard to forget actually existed. Or even, in some cases, bringing up the Captain and the Game Master Mega Man, which, again, we really wish didn't exist when we saw the original Blue Bomber. Yeah, it's literally 50-50. Some people are excited for this new series. Some are not because of the design choice. I guess I'll go first on my opinion here. I don't mind the design. It looks okay as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there's a Mega Buster and there's a blue helmet, and it looks fairly consistent. I mean, I've seen deviations from the original design that I don't hate. I actually like the whole NT Warrior design that they made, where some people tend to hate it. And even as a kid, I hate to even admit this, I actually did like the gold and blue design for some reason. But yeah, I don't have a problem with this. In fact, it kind of gets me excited to watch this Mega Man cartoon, just to see if they hold true to it. Romney, your thoughts on Mega Man?
Well, I don't have any real problems with the design because, well, at least it looks like Mega Man. They're not taking... I mean, a lot of people say, oh, it's a departure or betrayal, but really, it's not that big of a betrayal. I do see shades of the Mega Man EXE, but what's got me raising my eyebrows is not so much the design, but the premise. Because I'm looking at this, and it says that basically Mega Man has an alter ego by the name of Aki Light, who is a schoolboy who transforms into Mega Man. And I'm just thinking, did Sega already tried this with a grade school kid who transformed into Sonic the Hedgehog? And
you mean in the comics?
Yeah, it wasn't an Archie comic. This was a manga in Japan that they tried this with, and it didn't really work. And so with this, I'm looking at it, and I'm just like, and especially when they're doing the whole, oh, it's an alter ego who transforms into it, and I'm just like, so it's basically Mega Man Star Force, but you're trying to use the original designs and the original world. I mean, it bothers me because there's been a lot of, I mean, granted, a lot of people tend to think, oh yeah, but the original story, but what a lot of people tend to forget is that Mega Man himself is derivative of a lot of various robot stuff, like Astro Boy, and most notably, Shinzo Ningen Casshern, which is very much a direct correlation because you have the idea of someone. It's basically the same basic story of Mega Man, where you have an android that's not programmed for combat.
In fact, a lot of design choices for Mega Man are straight ripped out of Casshern.
Yeah, so. and the story with Casshern, that granted with Casshern it's a human stepping up and becoming a cyborg to fight the main bad guy. With Mega Man, you have a robot that's programmed for housework stepping up and saying, hey, this Dr. Wily fellow is doing some really awful stuff. Let me, put me in this new suit and I'll go and defeat him.
Yeah, it's one of those things that actually made me kind of facepalm a little bit when the Eddie LeBron movie came out and people got mad at the origin story that he gave for Mega Man. And I actually was one of those people that came out and said, no, that's accurate. That Dr. Light did create him to be, like an artificial sun kind of thing. And he created rock and roll for those exact same purposes, and then eventually Mega Man chose to become what he was. So that is technically accurate. And depending on the game you play, you don't necessarily see that. But I'm kind of there with you. I don't know if I like the whole closeted superhero, especially when you look at the design of this kid. He has to be like an elementary school kid. And so at that point, how do you explain that?
Well, yeah, and again, they found a way to get around that with the Mega Man Battle Network games and Star Force games, because that was a case of, oh, well, you're doing it on the internet, especially in the later games of Battle Network where you actually had LAN, actually fusing with Mega Man and actually doing the fighting himself. Yeah. Granted, it's still really weird that he did that, but I'm just like, okay, they at least built up to that and saying, okay, well, the lines are starting to blur between this digital world and the real world, and then you see that built on even further in Star Force, where now it's a case of, okay, well, it's like that anime series Fractal, where the internet and the real world have pretty much fully on merged in a regard, and so now that it just takes it to the next step. Here, it just feels like they're trying to copy themselves while going backward. And that's what worries me the most, is that this may not be... I just worry that the series itself may not be written particularly well. We may have a very serious Sonic Boom... I'm getting a very Sonic Boom vibe here.
And with that grunt, Alex, give us your thoughts on Mega Man, because I can already feel the anger brewing now that the Sonic Boom has been brought up.
I just hope they handle this better than Sonic Boom. Granted, I don't mind the TV series Sonic Boom. It's funny.
Fact, you don't want to see it at 4 a.m. on Saturday morning.
Right. I don't have any strong feelings. I mean, I'm just glad it's neither this.
Yeah.
Or, I got another one. We'll just...
We'll give you a second here. Hey, can I have a confession to make? As a kid, I actually did like that design. But, as an adult, I strongly regret that decision. So, for people who are going to get on my case, So,
okay. I'm glad it's not that one and it's not this one.
Well, keep in mind that one was at least moderately faithful.
Yeah.
And granted, the Deke cartoon wasn't perfect, but they tried working in what they could. They even tried working in X in a couple of episodes where they had basically where it was literally a two-parter called Mega Man from the Future because Mega Man X had come out, and they basically brought X to the timeline of that show, had the two versions of Mega Man interact, which
to me actually was a bad call, at least as far as I'm concerned, because that Mega Man series was very lighthearted, and then you brought in X, and X was dark and gritty and brooding and all that. And I actually thought those two episodes weren't as good as a lot of people made them out to be, and simply because the pace of the show got dramatically altered when you added X in.
Well, yeah, but at least it showed that they were at least trying to stay current and trying to make an effort. And that's what worries me here, because keep in mind, the storyline of Mega Man has been through the ringer so many times. I mean, aside from a lot of the unnecessary sequels, like Mega Man's 9 and 10, or the Mega Man X series past 5 and all of that, and it's just been a case of, let's just say the story's been mishandled, even by Capcom themselves, so...
Alex, it could have been this design.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, what makes that design... The design itself is not even the most annoying, but the fact where you had to add Mega over every single effing phrase.
No, you know what? That was not the problem. The problem before that was the fact that they had to have this one guy who liked to chronically smoke his parliaments saying Mega High and Mega, we need to go to Mega Videoland and Mega. That was the problem there, is that he already sounded like a freaking smoker. Like a chronic smoker, and he was saying Mega all the time.
Yeah, so pretty much it's like they took a tobacco-addicted Pokemon and stuffed him in a robot suit.
Pretty much. Or, I mean, it got even worse with Pitt, because he had to add Icus to everything.
Yes. Yeah, point being, we've seen worse, so hopefully they'll at least make something that's entertaining. I mean, I understand it's meant for a younger audience, and this is to kind of test the waters, but we've seen pretty bad. So, who knows? Maybe the bar has just been lowered.
Well, and for the record, we've seen bad. Alex has not seen this, I don't think. I don't think you've seen a single episode of Captain N, have you?
I'm not really sure. I know I've seen some Mega Man cartoons here and there, but I didn't watch them regularly.
This might be something we have to do together, because, frankly, we need some commentary for Alex's first reaction on some of the choices that were made on Captain N and maybe even Legend of Zelda and all the corniness for both of them.
Yeah, point being, the bar is pretty low when it comes to Mega Man being depicted. The anime adaptations notwithstanding, because that's a whole separate can of worms.
Oh, yeah.
And so it also leads me to wonder how much control Capcom is going to have over the direction of the series. Because given all the anime properties they've had based on their games, one thing Capcom has been very strict on is maintaining brand consistency and making sure that it's going to do the brand justice. I mean, especially if you notice with all the English dubs of all their anime, they specifically make sure that whoever's dubbing their anime says, okay, you're going to hire the voice actors who voice these characters in the games because we want that consistency. That's why they made sure to get Ruben Langdon for the Devil May Cry dub, because Capcom does care about its animated properties. And so hopefully Capcom will rein things in when things get a little too weird, but at the same time, it could go either way.
See, and for me, I was actually just going to add in there is that Capcom's view of consistency with Mega Man is to take it and put it in a deep, dark vault under the earth, under like 17,000 pounds of raw rock, because they just don't want to touch Mega Man. So yeah, I understand all of this stuff, and frankly, I still think it's a little too early to judge. I think this is one of those cases where, you know, Alex is going to get mad that I bring up this concept because Sonic fans did this, but the whole his legs are too long, his arms are blue, all that.
That's exactly what it reminded me of.
That's what this story is. Aside from bringing up some story details that are a little concerning, but this was basically a design thing where everybody picked it apart. And so I especially love the people that were saying that this is, for some reason, an outright Tron reference, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with you on that. But yeah, this is one of those times where we need to see this series in action to be able to say whether or not it's going to be good or bad. Me personally, I look forward to seeing what they do with it. So, final thoughts before we move on to the next story.
Hopefully
Yeah,
it's not.
I'll probably watch it.
And I'll probably make more my opinions known once I actually see a trailer. Once the voice cast is once we actually start seeing what the show will actually look like.
Yeah.
Because this is just concept art. They haven't even begun production. So.
So let's go ahead and move on to the next story here. And this one actually got a rise out of Alex, because if I say what I'm about to say, Alex is literally going to hit his head against a desk. His desk in particular. And that is that we are probably looking at the new Power Rangers cinematic universe. As if that hasn't been said numerous times this year.
Yeah, I'm following Alex's example.
What we have to deal with here, people. Welcome to Geek News.
Yeah.
So the reason that we bring this up, because I don't want people to think I'm just making a claim for the heck of it. The Lionsgate CEO John Feltheimer, I think it's Feltheimer. Feltheimer came out and actually told analysts during a Thursday conference call that his studio anticipates making as many as 7 Power Rangers movies. Keep in mind, people, we have the same issue that we did with Avatar, where, well, no, we have a different situation because the first movie hasn't even come out yet. And he's already promising 7 movies. Yes, welcome everybody. Behold, the Power Rangers cinematic universe. Because 7 movies, that's a lot.
Well, to be fair,
It is
I
a
wouldn't
lot.
I wouldn't immediately assume it would be a cinematic universe per se, because, well, let's take a look into consideration kind of the story of the Zordon arc, if you will. I mean, if you were to try to divide the seasons amongst the movies, you probably would have 4 for Mighty Morphin, and then you'd have Zeo, Turbo, and In Space to round out the remaining 3. If you're to use that arc as an example, so maybe either it could be trying to tell a larger story that eventually leads to their own version of Countdown to Destruction, or alternately, they could even be trying to go the James Bond route, where it's just you have the same team, same costumes, but you just have a new story released every so often.
Yeah, because frankly, I don't see them doing the full-on cinematic, or at least what you're saying, where we go all the way up to Countdown to Destruction, go through various incarnations of the teams and all that, especially with what they're doing with this new design. I would dare say if they do anything like that, it would be with these outfits, and they would just consistently do that.
Yeah, unless they decide to reimagine the suits, kind of have it be where you have these initial. Well, yeah, have them evolve where you kind of have first these crystal, very mystical suits, but then you see with stuff like Zeo and Turbo where they get the man-made augmentations that indicate, okay, now these are being shaped by human hands, and so they look like something a human would make, which would kind of be a way to slowly build up to the Space Ranger suits, and kind of the more sleek design. And again, that's just wishful thinking and kind of optimism, but that's kind of how I could see it, especially given the idea that it's going to be about how the characters themselves evolve over the course of their time as Rangers.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that we should also mention is that the amount of movies is actually in reaction to, I guess, the overall positive reaction of the costume reveal for not only Rita but also for the Rangers. And so they're saying that there could be as many as 7 movies being done. Now, before we start going into the speculation of they could do this plot line and they could do this and they could do that, I don't know necessarily if we could say that they could actually rip episode plot lines right off the bat. I mean, obviously, we were talking a lot about them ripping Green with Evil to some extent, or even we speculated a lot about, or the internet speculated a lot about basically Rita being the Green Ranger, whereas we were saying that she was just basically stealing off of the power core or whatever it would be. So at that point, we don't necessarily know what these plot lines are going to be. However, I would actually like to emphasize that if it's all based on reaction, then this 7-movie thing is based on reaction too. The first movie will dictate whether or not there's a second movie, and so on and so forth. It's going to be based off of your reactions to the film, and it's not necessarily, and I'm going to clarify this, not critical reception, but financial reception.
Mm-hmm.
So, because a lot of people like to bring this up to me that I should be 100 times more pissed that there's a sequel to the Ninja Turtles movie when critical reception was so against it. Well, the problem is that it did well financially.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
therefore, it's worth it.
Yeah, better example, the entire Transformers franchise. That's like the ultimate rebuttal right there.
Yep, hence why after seeing Age of Extinction, I'm one of the people that's saying I'm not paying money towards Transformers 5. And yes, I know the title, Last Night, it's dumb, I'm not seeing it. Or in some cases where Alex actually came out and said, you're going to vote with your dollar and say, I'm not going to go see Ghostbusters.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of those things that has to be considered there. And I think that's going to be considered with this Power Rangers movie, is that if it's financially successful, you will get a sequel, whether or not you like the writing or don't like the writing. And if that one's successful, it'll get a third. And they'll just go from there. Especially since that seems to be how Lionsgate likes to do things.
Yeah.
So,
Another thing to consider that also comes to my mind is whether or not with these 7 films, if they make it that far, how involved Toei might get. Given that it is based on the Super Sentai series, would Toei, and more accurately, would Bandai be dictating any things they would want to happen in the movies and have that kind of guide the story?
Before we go down that direction, I've actually never known the relationship between Toei and Saban. Is it a good one?
Fairly good. It got better after Saban bought it back because of all the problems Bandai kept having with Disney. Mm-hmm. And it's been a bit, because in the beginning it was tenuous, especially when Bandai tried to dictate certain demands in regards to Mystic Knights of Tirnanog. But when they were having to deal with Disney and how Disney more or less tried to buy the rights to the Super Sentai series, not just Power Rangers, but they literally tried to engineer control over the entire franchise, even in Japan. That's when Toei is just like, you know what, Saban, can we go back to you, because we don't want to deal with these idiots any longer. Mm-hmm. And so currently, it's actually a pretty good relationship, especially now that they're actually letting Saban skip seasons so that way they can stay current with the current season of Super Sentai, because that also makes sense from a financial standpoint for Bandai, because that means they don't have to recast and remake a bunch of old toys that they're no longer selling in Japan.
Yeah. So with that being said, I also want to point out, like, before we start jumping down this movie's throat, because I have a feeling we'll be doing plenty of that when the movie actually comes out. We're going to have problems here and there, and Kim was not properly represented, and Billy wasn't. We're going to have those problems. But really quick, I just kind of want to go into who they have actually helming this project so that you guys can make your assessments on whether or not you want to see this. Obviously, the one that we've talked about is Dean Israelite. He is the director for it, and his previous credits include Project Almanac. So if you saw Project Almanac and liked it, this is going to be another project from him. Now, people will probably point out to me, I didn't like Project Almanac. But given what I've seen so far of Dean's vision, I'm willing to give him a shot here.
Yeah, and as someone who liked Project Almanac, I'm pretty optimistic because it shows that he knows how to actually tell stories involving teenagers. He kind of knows how to actually shape that. What worries me a little bit now is that the amount of writers we have on the project seems to have increased.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and go into them. So first of all, we have John Gattens, who is known for he is one of the writers on Kong Skull Island. And also Real Steel. We have Burke Sharpless and Matt Sazama, who are both from Dracula Untold, which I guess is unpopular. I never saw it, but apparently it's going to be part of this whole Universal Monster Cinematic Universe now.
That was the idea, but let me put it this way. Dracula Untold is no Iron Man.
Yeah, well, I can't judge it. I still want to see Dracula Untold just for the heck of it.
Well, pretty much, it's basically the same basic story as Castlevania Lords of Shadow. If you go in with that mindset, you'll enjoy it, because that's pretty much all it is.
Okay, then I'm going to enjoy it, because I like Lords of Shadow.
Yeah, I guess we just have certain impasses, I guess.
Look, I like Lords of Shadow. Lords of Shadow 2 is where I kind of falter. But I like at least the original concept.
Yeah, moving on.
So the next one is Max Landis. He is from Chronicle, or he's one of the writers for Chronicle. And Zach Stentz and Ashley Miller, who are from X-Men First Class and the first Thor movie.
Yeah,
So
and they were
these are the
they were the
scriptwriters.
initial Yeah, they were like Zach Stentz and Ashley Miller were the initial writing team. But
Mhm.
given how many writers they've added, now I'm starting to think, okay, is this
Too
going
many
to be
cooks
one
in
of
the kitchen.
those? That's kind of what worries me. I mean, on the one hand, Max Landis, he obviously knows how to kind of research this sort of thing. I mean, many people have seen his Death and Return of Superman rant video and his various pitches for things like how he would have done Batman v Superman or his own pitch for the Death and Return of Superman that he was initially going to do for the New 52. But
Yep.
then you've got the people behind, well, Real Steel and Dracula Untold, and now I'm just thinking, oh boy, I get the feeling we're getting some sort of executive mandate or meddling in some regard, and now I'm starting to think, oh boy.
Which we need to see the movie before we can make that assessment, honestly. But
Yeah,
I agree with you. It really feels like too many cooks in the kitchen at this point.
Yeah, it's just the only difference is we're not going to have the weird old creepy serial killer going off and killing them one by one.
But we also do have a couple of other credits. We have Brian Tyler, who is composing the film score. He has credits for Avengers: Age of Ultron and Dragon Ball Evolution.
Oh boy.
So there's the high point and the low point of his career for you.
Yeah.
Because we care. And then we also have Kelly Jones, who's serving as costume designer. She's got credits for Straight Outta Compton and Sons of Anarchy. We have Hamish Purdy, who has credits from The Revenant in charge of set design. And obviously, if you didn't know this already, Weta Workshop is going to be involved in this movie and in future movies. So we have that to look forward to. If you don't know Weta Workshop, then you haven't seen a fantasy movie in this last 10 years at least, because Lord of the Rings, Narnia, did they
Hobbit.
have stuff? Hobbit. They have sci-fi credits too, but they're not coming to me. And
Did they work on Pacific Rim?
I was actually asking that
I
myself.
think they did.
I
Let me
think
find out.
I think they did for the robot design, and also the upcoming Warcraft film is also got a Weta credit. A lot of the designs for the weapons and the armor are from Weta, so they're everywhere. Like I said, most of their stuff is fantasy, but they have done sci-fi here and there. So there's lots to look forward to. There's a lot of good decisions in this casting list, and there's a lot of bad. But at that point, you guys can make your call and wait with us like everybody else until 2017 when we can actually see this movie and rip in a new one.
Yeah, or until late this year when the trailers start coming out.
That's true, and we'll probably be doing some trailer analysis.
Yeah, because they started production like a couple of months ago, I believe, and so they're currently shooting it. And so by December, at least, we're going to start seeing some trailers. At some point.
Yep. So, Alex, I don't think we actually got to your opinion on this reveal.
No, you haven't at all. So, first
do
of
I
all,
need to get the earplugs now? Because you're going to start screaming?
7 movies, that's getting overly ambitious, Lionsgate. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. Even I'm fairly optimistic about this movie when I should probably be more pessimistic, but I'm optimistic. I think I'm just curious what they're going to do with this kind of Power Rangers movie. So, but 7 is, I think, shooting yourselves a little high for right now. Let's see how this first one does, then we can consider that. I do hope this will do well enough because I do want to see Green with Evil realized on the big screen here.
It's like we said with James Cameron's Avatar getting 4 sequels. Do the first sequel. Let us judge whether or not it's going to be a good one. And then we'll go to the next one, kind of thing.
And you haven't brought up Cameron at the start, which is funny, but Cameron's defense when he was doing the first Avatar, he even had the fallback plan. It's like, well, if this movie doesn't do well, I'm just gonna go do a small film after this. But obviously, Avatar exploded and did amazing, so at the box office. Yeah. But let's just hold your horses a little bit, Lionsgate. Don't rush out the gate here, please. No. But also, to answer your question about Weta Workshop, no, they did not do Pacific Rim, and
I know they've got a sci-fi credit somewhere, but I don't.
They did Chappie.
There we are.
So there you go. Weta Workshop, I'm a little 50-50 on it because their effects can be kind of hit and miss. I mean, the Hobbit effects were all over the place, really. I'm sure there's
Yeah,
going to
and
be
even
multiple visual effects houses involved, but hopefully this one will be good.
well, yeah,
Dean Israelite, I thought Project Almanac was okay. I had some issues with it, but thought it was an okay film. Passable, fine. He did have a knack for working with all the young actors. Even the visual effects in that movie, for being a found footage movie, were pretty darn good. So I got some confidence there.
Yep.
You're right. There is quite a few writers here. Let's hope this all pulls together and doesn't come out to be a complete mess of a script with too many rewrites.
That's the hope here, because with too many writers, you know there's going to be at least 2 or 3 rewrites. So
Yeah. So
yeah.
it's the wait and see. Looking forward to when the first trailers start coming out.
Okay. Final thoughts before we move on, because I believe I got to your opinion, didn't I, Romney?
I pretty much made it clear. You didn't ask for it explicitly. I just chimed in like I always do.
Yeah, pretty much. So unfortunately, we have 10 minutes left on our allotted time here, and so we had a big discussion set up. But I actually think I'm going to move it to next week, because maybe we'll be able to get somebody like Brenton or Aldo in on the discussion as well. So in turn, I'm going to actually move to one of our backup stories instead, if that's okay with you guys.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that is actually, I'm so glad we brought up James Cameron, because this is actually the backup story, and I can already feel the facepalm happening with Alex, is that, yes, we're talking about it. So we actually have news coming out of James Cameron, or at least I think from James Cameron. I think he's still on this project. And that is that the movie that we keep on bringing up, Battle Angel Alita, which he wanted to be able to do, has a casted lead role. And that is the Maze Runner's Rosa Salazar, set as the, I'm guessing, Alita. I've never seen I don't think I've seen Battle Angel Alita, honestly.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it even has had an anime adaptation. I've only seen the manga, and that's about it.
Yeah, there is I don't know how long or how many episodes, but I know there's an OVA to Battle Angel Alita. But that's it. There's not a long series or anything. Just I know there's an OVA to it.
Yeah, so Rosa Salazar will be playing Battle Angel Alita, which is the story of a female cyborg who becomes a criminal tracking bounty hunter after a scientist discovers her remains in a trash heap. And so, okay.
Yeah, to my knowledge, I know that it's being produced by Cameron, but the director is Robert Rodriguez, and that's where
you lose me. Oh.
Robert Rodriguez. Why do I know that name?
Spy Kids.
Spy Kids.
I didn't see Spy Kids, so I wouldn't know that.
Spy Kids, Machete, Shark Boy, and Lava Girl.
And then I haven't seen anything from Robert Rodriguez.
El Mariachi. Once Upon a Time in Mexico.
Maybe any of the films he's edited.
I don't know. I know the name. I just don't know if I've seen anything from. I know the hype around Spy Kids, but I never saw the Spy Kids movies.
Well, have you seen Planet Terror? Because that was the Grindhouse film he did with Quentin Tarantino.
Is that the one where
the hooker with the machine gun for a leg?
Yeah, I was gonna say that chick from Charmed. I saw pieces of that.
Okay, we're gonna need to sit Adam down and we're probably gonna have to sit him down and show him some of these movies to give him some idea of why Alex and I are kind of worried.
Well, you guys are worried. That's all I need, honestly. I'm actually looking up Rosa Salazar just to see if we can get some other things that she's done aside from.
Well, she was in Maze Runner. She was in Insurgent, and another film that came up is Night Owls.
Mm-hmm. We have Insurgent, we have The Pro, Search Party, Batman Arkham Origins. She did a video game voice there, but it looks like this would probably be one of those breakout roles for her, especially with James Cameron being able to play Alita in there. And also she's set up for the next Maze Runner movie as well for 2017, The Death Cure. So yeah, she doesn't really have a whole lot of credits to her aside from Insurgent and The Maze Runner. So at that point, this would be her breakout role, at least as far as I am concerned. Alex,
did you ever see Sin City, by the way?
Oh yeah, I forgot that was also him.
I've seen it on TV, and again in pieces, so I don't know how much I actually saw.
Okay, we're gonna need. Okay, Alex, you bring the chair. I'll bring the straps. Add the eye drops.
Right. Okay.
We're gonna have a Clockwork Orange in my office.
Pretty much.
At one point. Wonderful. I just remember not liking Sin City, but mainly because I wasn't a big fan of the Sin City comic to begin with. So that's my only thoughts on the matter. Yeah, I wish I had more thoughts on either this casting or Robert Rodriguez, but I really don't. And I can feel out in the ether Aldo is going to walk through this door right now and just smack me. Hasn't happened yet. It's going to happen.
Yeah. And, I mean, she at least kind of looks like the character. Granted, I haven't read Battle Angel Alita, so I don't know too much, but I can kind of see it at least. I can kind of see that with enough makeup and the costuming, I can actually kind of visualize her playing the role. But that's coming from someone who's only seen some of the artwork and hasn't actually read the story and is not that familiar with it. I think Dark Horse is the one that has the license to it here in the U.S. But, yeah, so far, I don't have any major problems with the casting choice. I know some people have been very wary, but, well, it's a lot like whenever we mention a certain other anime adaptation that shall remain nameless. My problem's not really with the actors, it's the director. And although Cameron may have a sizable...
Is it involving a spirit in the shelf?
We said it shall remain nameless.
We said it shall remain nameless.
I didn't say its name.
Yeah, but point being, although James Cameron is going to have some control, he's going to be busy with the Avatar movie, so I don't know how strict he's going to be with Robert Rodriguez in terms of how faithful it. I mean, who knows? I could be proven wrong. Maybe Robert Rodriguez is a fan of the manga. Who knows? I
don't necessarily want to just immediately judge this based off of the whole Avatar situation. I really don't. Like, because again, if James is not even at the helm for it, then it's a whole other situation. But at the same time, this is an anime adaptation that looks like it might have some degree of potential. So I don't necessarily, like, comparing the artwork and the actress, I don't see an issue with it. I have a feeling there are going to be issues being brought up with it, along the same lines of the whole whitewashing argument and not using a proper Asian actress for it.
The thing is with Alita, though, she's not Asian. That's the same thing that Doug Walker brought up in his video. Oh, nobody complained when Keanu Reeves was going to play Spike. Well, that's because Spike Spiegel is not Asian, which means that is not the issue, because Spike Spiegel, even looking at his frickin' last name, is supposed to be of German Jewish descent. So having him played by someone like Keanu Reeves makes sense. And Alita is also not Asian, and so that's also the case of, okay, the casting may actually be decent. Because that's something that a lot of people tend to forget of. Oh, anime, that means they have to be played by Japanese? No. We all saw Attack on Titan. We know that doesn't always work.
Yeah,
this is true. So, Alex, have you gotten into your thoughts on it?
Not quite, but also to answer your earlier question, Viz Media actually has the license to the manga here.
Okay.
Alright, so Battle Angel Alita. Now, in fairness, I've not actually read the manga myself or seen the OVA. It does look interesting. I want to look into it myself, but I've been following Cameron's interest in Battle Angel Alita for quite a while, in between all the Avatar mess he's been doing. But ultimately, again, it's just, I feel like if anyone's going to do a live-action anime or manga justice, it's going to be Cameron, because this is a man, and if he picks the right property anyway, and this is a sci-fi, and it's a fairly adaptable sci-fi that doesn't have to worry about being too buried in either cultural differences or adaptation differences, like when you try and adapt a long-running manga that also has a long-running anime to it, like Dragon Ball, Fullmetal Alchemist, so on. So that's why I'm really interested in this, but Robert Rodriguez is just not my choice of director. I feel like Rodriguez as a director, he has kind of the two extremes. He either can go really adult and really gritty, fine, but he can also go really young when he wants to make a movie for his kids, like with Spy Kids or Shark Boy Lava Girl. And frankly, he just doesn't have a good repertoire with visual effects like Cameron does.
Yeah, at the same time, though, that could pay off depending on whether they decide to go with something realistic or something stylized. Because although Robert Rodriguez doesn't have the greatest grasp, when it comes to doing stylized effects, he can do an okay job.
Well, the other thing to consider also is, like, comparing Robert Rodriguez and James Cameron doesn't really work out that well because, again, people are probably going to be mad at me for bringing up this kind of terminology, but James Cameron is kind of a security blanket when it comes to directors. I mean, he not only has the knowledge of directing, he has knowledge of as many professions as he actually wants to get into, roughly. Because I've seen this guy advise on computer programming, for crying out loud. He's done that. So at that point, with Cameron, you know that you're going to get a good product. You don't necessarily have to agree with the tropes of his films. You know you're going to get a good product start to finish as far as his polish. But for Rodriguez, you don't have that. And that's why I'm saying, like, you can't necessarily judge this based off of Cameron. Cameron is not as involved as Rodriguez will be when he brings this to the screen.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I'm the most worried, because if you look at how Robert Rodriguez plans his films, he's kind of the opposite of Cameron, whereas Cameron is very meticulous and likes to basically put everything in its place. With Rodriguez, he's very much the frenetic, fly by the seat of my pants. I mean, his video storyboards, you can see he's very much the kind of person who likes to kind of brainstorm on set and think things through when he's actually on a location, rather than planning it out as meticulously as Cameron would.
Yeah.
Maybe the two powers might cancel each other out, and we might produce something good, or they could cancel each other out and produce something bad. And that's what worries me, is that you've got two directors with radically different methods of filmmaking that are kind of coming together on this idea. And like you mentioned, Adam, Cameron may not be as heavily involved because he's going to be busy with doing Avatar, so he'll probably be about as involved as Spielberg was involved with all of the various animated shows that Warner Brothers produced in the 90s, where he'll just sign off on certain things and say, yeah, you can do this, yeah, you can do this, no, you can't do this, and all that.
Yeah. And also, just to answer a quick question, so there's a lot of faith lost that apparently I haven't seen anything with Robert Rodriguez. Apparently I have, because I have seen Desperado, and apparently he does have a director credit for that.
That's part of his El Mariachi trilogy.
Not exactly standout, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's one of those films. You've got to start from the beginning with the Mariachi trilogy with El Mariachi. That's where you kind of start at the story where you basically have a mariachi player who accidentally picks up the wrong guitar case.
Yeah, and I've only seen Desperado, and I saw it just on TV. So I'm pretty sure I didn't even see the full version of the movie. I'm sure there's tons of it cut out.
Yeah, there usually is.
So final thoughts before we wrap things up tonight, because we're almost out of time.
I think we've said it all.
Yep.
Yeah.
We don't have any problems with the casting, but we want to see this come out before we make any kind of judgments. Rosa Salazar, good on you. Let's see if you can pull this role off. So let's go ahead and wrap things up for the night. If people want to get a hold of us and leave their opinions on the stories that we did cover, Alex, how do they do that with you?
Well, you can always find me in one of a couple places, really. You can, of course, find me here on YouTube, Shadowblazer 3000, which is my primary channel, where I do all kinds of anime content and the occasional game content stuff as well. And, of course, if you want to keep to me on social media, you can find me on Twitter at AlexJShort.
All right, and Romney, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they do so?
Well, you can always find me here on YouTube at youtube.com/StudioGhostUtah. You can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Romney'sReviews. And I'm also on Twitter at RomneyReviews. And as for my recommendation this week for Romney's Reading Club, I'm recommending another sci-fi series that I would want to see James Cameron tackle, Planets by Makoto Yukimura. It's basically about a space crew of astronauts that are in charge of cleaning up space debris in Earth's orbit. So it's a space crew that doesn't have exactly the most glamorous job, but it explores the kind of things that we actually will have to address when humanity eventually expands out into space, colonizing the moon and various planets, so on and so forth. It's actually very grounded. The guy, Makoto Yukimura, does a lot of research for his work, and so you can tell that he's basically fleshed out this world and has thought of how humanity might realistically expand into space. So that's my recommendation, is Planets by Makoto Yukimura, available through Dark Horse.
All right, and if people want to get a hold of me, there are two great ways to be able to do so. One is my YouTube channel at Direct23, or youtube.com/Direct2326. That is where Geek News is hosted, and is also where all of my various other content is hosted, including my game reviews, my Let's Plays, all of the events that I have going on this summer, and we'll go into those details in a bit. And you can also contact me on Twitter at Drac2326 and leave your opinions there. I will get to them as soon as I can. I just don't leave any promises on whether or not I'm going to have a positive or a negative reaction to what you have to say. So I'm just going to say that right here and now. If you want to get a hold of the show directly, there are 4 ways to do it, and the first 2 are social media based. One is Facebook, which is you can look up Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions and like it. And also you can follow us on Twitter at GeekyNRO, and you'll get up-to-the-minute information where we're going live, the stories that we will be covering, and even we will be putting up more opinion-based articles where we can actually open it up to you and let you guys comment on what you think of the story so that we in turn can kind of have that interaction with you guys as well. The other 2 ways are through our email, which is geekyweek@gmail.com, and you can leave the stories that you would like us to cover, because obviously we did cover at least 2 listener suggestions. 2 of the other stories were also listener suggestions as well. And also you can leave your opinion on the show, any feedback, constructive feedback that you'd like to leave. And also we have a big event happening this summer where I'm actually going to be doing Gaming with the Geeks this summer with each member of my panel, and allowing for some questions to be answered, as well as being able to enjoy some good games. So, for example, we already have out a couple of parts of me and Brenton getting together for Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition. And I can also say this for a fact, that me and Alex got together to be able to record that portion, and me and Aldo and me and Romney will be doing that fairly soon, although you might see some repeat over some of these. So I will point that out, because I think, I don't think this is going to be a problem to admit, but Alex will also be joining us for Romney's version. But there will be a focus on Romney. I promise you guys that. And then also, so you guys can look forward to all of that stuff and leave your questions for those particular episodes at geekyweek@gmail.com, as well as for the Q&As that will be happening at the end of those Let's Plays, where we're going to go a little bit more in depth with each panelist. So the other place you can go to is Podomatic. Yes, Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions is on Podomatic.com. So you can follow us at geekyweek.podomatic.com, and you can get access to our RSS feed when we have episodes up to date. In fact, our last week's episode, unfortunately, was a little late, but it is up. So you guys can enjoy that, as well as when this episode gets up. And you can also subscribe to iTunes and get the RSS feed there, so that whenever we get up to speed episodes or up-to-date episodes in the archive, you guys will get first access to that. But that's going to go ahead and do it for us this evening. So we hope you guys have enjoyed. We continue to love you guys' contributions and your love for what we do, because, well, without you, we would just be 4 geeks ranting about the issues of that given week. And so we continue to love everything that you guys do and the support that you guys give us. But that's going to do it for us this week. So for me, for Alex, and for Romney, we'll see you guys next week for even more geek news, reviews, and opinions.